Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review The Shack, which is about a man whose daughter gets killed, and then he winds up spending a weekend in this shack with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Now, this is a film that's come along in a long string of very religious Christian films that have been coming out, like God's Not Dead, and The Case for Christ, and The Shack. And this is one of the biggest budgeted ones so far. And this is a very interesting and engaging concept. And is it handled with the most steady, not overwhelming hand? Not really. But you know what? It's a feel good movie. Is it a good movie? No. Overall, as a film, it's not a good film, but does this make you feel good leaving it? Definitely made me feel good. And I can tell that this is a film for a very particular audience and trying to hit at that. And I guess to start off talking about the direction, the director is Stuart Hazeldine, and overall, he tells a well structured story. And I feel like I was actually a little surprised about this, how much the story actually logically built up on each other and used really good scaffolding of story to actually slowly but surely get Mac, who's our main character, Mackenzie, to the point where he's feeling like he's getting over the things he needs to get over. Now, they tried to be really smart and cool with nonlinear storytelling in this, which was completely pointless. I just felt like they did that for the sake of doing it and trying to shake things up. It wasn't really needed. In terms of the pacing of this film, it drags. There's a certain point that it gets to towards the end of the second act, beginning of the third act, that's just like, okay, did this really need to be in the movie? This is almost a 2 hour and 15 minute film, which it does not need to be a 2 hour and 15 minute film. I don't go out and saying that I actually love long epic films when it makes sense. This film was a little too long. They could have trimmed some stuff. And overall, the tone of this film is really, really melodramatic. And I'm going to make some more comparisons to this later, but it feels like a Hallmark movie, which I wouldn't be surprised if this was a Hallmark movie. And it just has that vibe that it really goes for cliched buzz points where it's like, okay, I know this is important. This is gonna, okay, here's the part for me to start crying kind of stuff, and it really relies upon that a lot. In terms of the actual cinematography, which was done by Declan Quinn, this is overall a pretty well made film, and you can tell that at least they had a $20 million budget to make this particular film. But like the comparison I made earlier, this has that Hallmark sheen where everything's like all nice and bright and like shiny and sparkly in terms of the cinematography, and it looks a little artificial. And I guess it's supposed to be hitting that like feel good vibe to go along with the rest of the film, but it really looks cheap. There are actually some absolutely beautiful shots in this film, though, which I was actually really impressed and glad that they went to those certain places. But overall, the CGI in this was pretty iffy, and it's like there were certain things that they needed CGI for to tell this particular story. But the thing is, they didn't really have the budget to warrant using those scenes and sequences, but they did it anyway, and it looked pretty cheap. But I would be lying to say that there weren't some absolutely beautiful shots in this film that I want to give some credit to. In terms of the writing, it's written by my favorite writer, by committee. There's three different screenwriters, a couple of people who helped adapt the book into the story. There's basically like 6 people involved overall with putting this story together, and the messages, the very Christian messages in the dialogue are pretty heavy-handed in terms of conversations going on in the film, and I just wish they could have been more subtle and more artful with how they were putting these messages across. But yeah, it does feel really preachy, and I guess that's the point of what it's trying to be. There is definitely some underdeveloped relationships, and include the main relationship between Mackenzie and his wife. I don't feel like they spent a whole enough of they didn't spend enough of the time to make that connection why they really care about each other, which is not a good thing. I do feel like he did make the connections pretty well with most of the kids. Sorry, random son that I have, that's not really important to the progress of the story, so we're not really going to go into your relationship, which is kind of a pet peeve. If you're trying to make us feel connected to this man and his family, please make us feel connected to all of his family, or at least show us the kind of relationship, unless he is neglectful to one of his kids, which, not to spoil anything, but with some of the stuff that our main character's been through, told in basically a prologue at the beginning of the film, I don't think that's the case. In terms of, this uses some really bad narration, and if you ever seen the film adaptation, Brian Cox's character makes a really funny comment about screenwriters lazily using narration, which that film actually does use some fantastic narration. This film does not. And having Tim McGraw, who's not even an actor, try to give this narration throughout this film, it was not needed. Just show us what's going on. And there are some really blatant ones. So it's like, did you really need to say that? And we couldn't even figure that out on our own. It basically felt like somebody was trying to spoon feed us information throughout the film. But I do have to give credit that this film, the written story, gives us a pretty deep main character, and you see a lot of struggle going on within him. And I have to give this film some credit. This was a very connectable main character, but unfortunately, let's segue into some of the acting that goes on. And Sam Worthington, one of my favorite actors, sarcasm intended, was completely miscast and misfire in this film. There's parts where I could really feel like he was upset and feeling things, but his accent's awful. Who keeps telling him to do American accents? And they're just so awkward and unconvincing, inconsistent shows of emotion by him throughout this film that it really hurt the film. And you really, if you're going to make this film with such an important, deep character, please cast somebody who's able to handle that. I don't know if it's the fact that it's like, ever since Avatar, he'll take a paycheck and they needed somebody, but you probably should have tried to hire somebody that was a little more adapt to taking on such a character. Because let's be real, most of the characters Sam Worthington plays aren't super deep. This film needed an actor that was capable of handling that. And I mentioned him before, but Tim McGraw is so stiff and awkward in this film. Like, why? I know why they hired him, so he could make, him and his wife Faith Hill can make a song for this movie. And they did. And he was really awkward and not really good in it. And then overall, most of the other people did their jobs. Graham Greene shows up for a little bit, and he felt really out of place and a little stiff. But there's one performance that's a complete revelation in this film, and it's Octavia Spencer. And because she is an Academy Award nominated actress, but she's still not like super household name where she wouldn't sign on to a movie like this, she plays God, and she is fantastic. I loved every bit of screen time that she had. I felt all the feelings that she was meant to portray, and she did a really good job. And thumbs up to you, because you salvaged a lot in this film. In terms of the music, Aaron Zigman's score is very cliched, very melodramatic, very manipulative. It swells really obnoxiously when you're supposed to feel sad, and it's not really memorable score. Overall, this is not a well-made film, and my grade's going to reflect that, which I'm going to give this film a D. And I don't think a whole lot of people are surprised about that. But this is such a good, feel-good experience that if you're really wanting to feel uplifted, I think this film is worth seeing. If you're if the lack of craft in the film is gonna get in the way of you enjoying a film, then don't see it, because you're gonna notice all those things. But if you're just going in and you just want to feel good and feel uplifted, this film's going to do that for you. And I know a lot of people that don't really care about the craft that goes in the film, but just how they make you feel. And this film is a really feel-good film. So if you want to get a nice, uplifting experience and don't mind spending 2+ hours at the theater, go out and see The Shack. If not, probably avoid this film.